Okay, good morning everybody. Welcome to Cayman Turtle Centre. This is our Turtle Centre Turtle Talk in honor of World Sea Turtle Day, which is actually tomorrow. So join us again tomorrow for a live turtle release to honor World Sea Turtle Day. But today we're going to talk about turtles up close. A little bit more than the regular tour. We're going to meet something about the animals themselves. So, sea turtles, what do you know about them? I'm sure you guys have seen some things on Discovery Channel or Blue Planet and those kind of animal shows. But here at the Cayman Turtle Centre, some of you may or may not know, we have sea turtles at every stage of their life cycle. And here we also we do a lot of research on the things that we can do with sea turtles that other people can't do, because turtles are, they're an endangered species. There's only certain things you can do with them in the wild. But here, where we have our own sea turtles, we can do research that actually helps contribute to the global species knowledge. And we have contributed to global species knowledge to make our decisions better for conservation. So let's start with where it all starts, at our hatchery. So let's go meet some hatchlings. So as you know, Cayman Turtle Centre started way back in 1968. We have over 50 years of experience dealing with sea turtles, more specifically the green sea turtle. But we have a surprise. We have something else, another species for you to meet here. So this is where it all starts, in our hatchery. Between the months of April to October, our turtles are breeding here at the Cayman Turtle Centre. Okay. Now this is a natural process. We don't encourage them to breed. They keep doing what they were doing for millions of years. So right there, right now, and you see in a moment, we see the turtles out there making their nests and laying their eggs. We collect the eggs. We actually have a night crew that collects the eggs, bring them into the hatchery, and you incubate them at about 82 degrees Fahrenheit. Okay, so over the years, we've discovered that's a mid-range, because turtles, like most reptiles, the sex or the gender is determined by the incubation temperature. If it's above 82 degrees on average for the period of the incubation, which is about 50 to 60 days, then you start to get females. If it's below 82 degrees on average over the incubation period of 50 to 60 days, then you tend to get more males. So the way we like to think of this, hot chicks, cool guys. Right? The warmer it is, the more girls you get. The cooler it is, the more males you get. Okay. Now, with climate change and global temperatures warming up, we're getting a lot more females. Okay. And that is an issue. But what we do is, when we collect these eggs, we actually have trained staff that collect these eggs at night. They bring them in, and all those boxes you see there are incubation boxes. Each of those boxes contains a clutch of eggs. I record the number. All of our female breeders have pit tags. We record the number of the breeder. We bring them in, we set the eggs, and we know that within 50 to 60 days, those eggs are going to hatch. So we have an example of what this looks like. So this is an incubation box. When we collect the eggs, we put them on the sand. This is sand that comes from 7 Mile Beach on Grand Cayman. And we set the eggs. We cover the eggs, similar to what it would be like in the wild. Now these eggs, of course, are not viable. They're already hatched. So that hole there means that they've hatched out. But this is just because we have lots of schools that come through here. We want to show the children what it looks like in a nest, so they understand what's going on in the boxes. Turtle eggs, as you can see, don't crack open. They tear open because they're soft-shelled eggs. Right? Something similar to a water balloon. So when the baby hatches out, the hatchling, they burst out of the shell like how you would burst your hand through a paper bag. Okay? So every day we check on these eggs. We check these boxes to see the progress. And we know as it gets close to 50 to 60 days, at some point these babies are going to hatch out. Now they take a while to actually emerge from the eggs because they're turtles. Everything takes a while with turtles. So it can take up to an hour or sometimes more for a baby to actually emerge from the shell completely. And when they come out, remember, their shells are soft because they have to curl up inside the egg. And as they're exposed to the air, that shell slowly begins to harden over time. And then you end up with the hatchlings. So these are our hatchlings. These guys are just a few days old out of the egg. Okay? So when they hatch out, I'm going to put on my gloves here because at this stage they're very delicate, and we don't want to infect them with anything. So we make sure when we handle them, leave it as sterile as possible. So these little guys hatch out. They're just about the size of an Oreo cookie. So think of an Oreo cookie with flippers. At this stage, when they come out, well, you can't see it, but when they're in the egg, they come out. There's a little hole there in the middle of the plastron. Plastron is that belly shell. That's their belly button. Inside the egg, there's a huge yellow ball stuck to that stomach, and that is the yolk sac. That yolk sac is, think of it like a can of Red Bull. So as that yolk sac is absorbed, that gives them the energy that they need to start swimming, because they come out, as soon as they come out, as you've seen on TV, they come out with a burst of energy. They take out to the nest, they rush to the water, and they start swimming like crazy because they got to get to deep water. They got to find sargassum, seaweed, something to hide in. And that's yolk sac is what gives them that energy. So the underside of these baby turtles is white, because if you think about it, a fish swimming below, looking up at the light, will just see white if you see that against the background. Okay, so they're looking up at a baby turtle swimming. Remember, these guys are so small, they can't really dive. But up against the light, they're much harder to see, especially if there's lots of white clouds. Looking from above, they're dark. So if you were a seabird skimming the ocean and looking for prey at the surface over the dark, deep water, it's hard to see a dark, tiny turtle swimming along. So this is camouflage. This is another survival strategy for them. The other survival strategy, of course, is that they emerge in numbers, in mass. So the idea is that they're basically just fish food, which is why there's no parental care with sea turtles. That's why they lay so many eggs. It's just a law of averages. The more you lay, the more likely to have one to survive. And the accepted rate is 1 in 1,000. Some say more to like 1 in 10,000 will survive from a nest to come back as an adult and start the process again. Okay? So here at the Turtle Center, we want to give these guys the best opportunity that they can. So when they hatch out, we leave them in these trays to make sure that their belly button is completely closed before we put them into the seawater. Because as you may or may not know, seawater is not that clean. There's lots of bacteria and microbes in there. So we want to make sure that they're well sealed up before they come out, before they go into the water. So let's take a look at the process. What happens when before they get to the stage. So some of you that have been to the Turtle Center before, you might have, the first feature you see is our breeding pond. And the breeding pond is where we have our herd of breeders. We have females and males in that one pond. Okay? And what we do is provide them an artificial environment, well, a semi-natural environment where they can swim, feed. So the more they breed, the better it is for the conservation program. In some years, we will end up with thousands of eggs, up to 40,000, 50,000 eggs at some point. Okay. All right. So today is a really rainy day, so it stirred up the water, so it's not as clear as it can be. But if you stop and you listen, you can hear them breathing. And just an aside, these are all green sea turtles. This is a male. If you can see at the back, there's a long, thick tail. That's how you tell males from females. There's another way we can tell. Hopefully I'll get a chance to show that to you. And here's another male. So in our breeding herd, we have a ratio of roughly 3 females to 1 male. Because females lay their eggs maybe once every other year. Sometimes they might skip 2 years. The males, they don't have that issue. So we want to make sure that every year we have enough females that are breeding. And we will get up to 100 females breeding in a season. Right? Okay, so when they breed, just like they come up on the beach to lay their eggs. And we provide a beach. So again, with sand from the famous 7 Mile Beach and other parts of Grand Cayman, we provided this beach. So in the background, today's a nice cool day. You can actually see a turtle crawling. So sometimes turtles will come up and nest during the day if it's a dark, cool day like today. Okay? And once a sign that a turtle is nested has come up on the beach, most of the time in the wild you will not actually see the turtle, but you will see a sign. And this is what we call a crawl, a turtle track. It looks like a tractor drove up the beach, but the turtle has actually crawled up here. She will crawl and drag her bulk. Remember, this is an animal that spends most of its life suspended in the water. So when it comes out of the water, and they don't have feet, they have flippers, there's no toes. They have to drag themselves, literally crawl up the sand and find a spot, usually above the high tide mark, to lay their eggs. So the signs that the turtle has come up is a track. And each individual species, there are 7 species of sea turtles around the world, each individual species has its own unique track. So this is a green turtle track. We also, in Grand Cayman, in the Cayman Islands, we have loggerheads and we have hawksbills as well. Okay, so each one of them leaves a different track. Similar, you can tell it's a sea turtle track, but each one is different in its own way. Another sign that the turtle has been there are these large holes in the sand. These are what we call body pits. When a turtle digs a nest, the first thing she does, she uses the front flippers to dig a deep hole where her whole body can fit. And then when she gets down into the pit, she uses her back flippers to dig the actual egg chamber. After she's finished laying, then she will spin around, throw sand everywhere, and camouflage where the nest is. So even though you see a body pit, that does not mean the nest is actually there. It could be somewhere else. Sometimes she will dig more than one. Sometimes she might start a body pit and then give up and go dig another one somewhere else. Sometimes it's very difficult to find a sea turtle, which is why we have to have a night crew that actually watches the turtle, observe where they lay the eggs, and collect the eggs afterwards to incubate, to give them the best chance of survival. Because if we leave the eggs in the sand, well, there's all kinds of hazards. There's the weather. Cool days like this, too many cool days like this, well, the eggs might not incubate properly. Of course, you'll get a lot more guys, because remember, hot chicks, cool guys. Okay? There's also the hazards of too much rain that might drown the eggs or form too much moisture, which could lead to fungus. Or you can have ants. And in the case of the Cayman Islands, Grand Cayman, we also have iguanas that will dig up the nest. Okay? So, all over this beach, you can see signs that turtles have been up in here and digging. Okay? And they start from as early as April, and it goes all the way until about the end of October. Okay? So let's go meet some more turtles. So just an aside, when some people come here, they always wonder why the turtles seem to be crowding together. Well, the thing is that green turtles, which is the only herbivorous species of sea turtle, the old Caymanian name for them was sea buffaloes. The reason being, they're the only species of sea turtle that's actually known to herd. Most sea turtles are solitary, but greens are the only ones that actually herd together. They don't have a leader as such, but they do follow each other. Now, these days, there's not enough sea turtles in the wild to see that behavior. Cayman has a long association with sea turtles, over 500 years of interacting with these animals. It's actually part of our culture. So the Caymanians, the old Caymanian turtle rangers and seamen, they knew that these turtles will herd together. And in fact, there are stories of some people learning if they get lost at sea, how they find their way back is by following herds of sea turtles. They actually had a name for them. They call them bales. That word doesn't exist anymore. Well, it's not an official National Geographic word, but a bale is the only ones that do that behavior. There's another species of sea turtle that actually gathers in numbers, but that's when it comes to breeding. And that's the one you're going to meet here now. So they have a name for their groups, and it's called an arrebata, which is a Spanish word for arrival. And that species, some of you might have guessed already, is the Kemp's Ridley sea turtle. Kemp's is the smallest and the rarest of all species of sea turtles. At the Cayman Turtle Centre, we actually have some Kemp's Ridleys. So here they are, down below. Hope you can see them. So the reason we have these here is a project from way back in the early 80s with working with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. When the Kemp's Ridleys were on the brink of extinction because they breed in the Gulf of Mexico. And of course in the Gulf of Mexico there's lots of oil exploration, and you have oil spill disasters like the Exxon Valdez and other things like that that keep occurring from time to time. The Kemps are carnivores. They feed on shellfish, mostly at the sea bottom, and most shellfish are scavengers. So when you get oil pollution and everything sinks to the bottom, guess who picks it up? The scavengers. And guess who eats those scavengers? These Ridley turtles. So together with two other institutions in the US, we were given some Kemp's Ridleys to try to start a breeding program. Of the 3 institutions that were given Kemp's Ridleys, working with US Fish and Wildlife, only one was able to breed them successfully in captivity. And that was the Cayman Turtle Centre. So we bred these, we were able to breed these in captivity. And in 1999, we were able to send back over 100 Kemp's Ridleys back to the US-Mexico border to start breeding program again in the wild. So these are what you call a Noah's Ark project. Having these Kemp's Ridleys here, they're not really for display only, but they're also part of a conservation program. If something happens to that species, then we can start the program over again. So our 50+ years of breeding green sea turtles has helped us to start breeding a rare and the most endangered of all the sea turtles, the Kemp's Ridley sea turtle. Okay. So these guys are here as part of that program, and we will continue to watch over them and monitor them. And of course, one day, hopefully we won't have to, but if we do, we know what to do to get them to start breeding again. Okay. So let's start looking at some other close-up looks at some turtles. So sea turtles the only way to tell the males from the females is from the length of the tail, as I mentioned earlier. Males have long tails, females have short tails. If the tail is longer than the back flippers, it's a male. If the tail is shorter than the back flippers, it's a female. But there's another way, up close and personal, that you can identify a male from a female. Okay. In these here, what we call our display tanks, these are turtles that are in their teens. They're not fully mature yet because it's accepted that most sea turtles are fully mature at around 20 odd years old. Here at the Turtle Centre, our turtles are sexually mature a lot earlier than that. But here's something else that you can't see close up. This is a female, and so is this. And on the female turtles, there's a tiny nail. That's the equivalent of our thumbnail. On the females, that nail is very small and vestigial. On the males, that nail actually has a hook. And that is what helps the male to hold on to the female. Breeding females will have 2 marks right here on the shell, on the shoulders. Those are what we call mating scars, because the male will use those hooks, those thumbnails, to hold on to the shell. And you get these mating scars in the breeding season on the females. So there's something you can tell. So if you're not sure if it's a male or female, one of the other ways to tell is, if you get a chance, you can look at the flipper. Now the thing is, the males grow their tails and their claws when they get to around between 5 to 7 years old here at the Turtle Centre. So that's another way we can tell. So before that, when they're up to about 4 years old, there's no external way to tell the male from a female. Okay? So that's the thing, up close and personal, you can tell. So let's take a look at this female. You handle it gently, and yes, it's a female, because all she has is just a stub. Again, if it was a male, you will actually see that nail projecting out into a hook so that you can grab on. All right, so, yeah. Okay, so I'm looking to see if by chance we come across a male. Well, while we're here, another way to identify green turtles is their shell. When the Turtle Center started, we got turtles breeding stock from all around the Caribbean, because in the 1960s there were no breeding sea turtles left in the Cayman Islands, and that is why the program started. In order to get breeding stock or starting stock, we had to actually go to different islands and different parts of the Caribbean, from far south as Suriname on the top of North South America, and Ascension Island off the coast of Brazil, all the way up to Cuba. So we collected a variety of sea turtles, quite a mix of genetic material. This is before genetics even became a thing. But in those days, they figured variety is the spice of life. Let's get a variety of species. And that's where we got our genetic diversity from. And these turtles, they're all grown and healthy, but all of them, there are green turtles, but just like people, or just like animals in different places, they all have their own characteristics that make them unique to wherever they came from. South American turtles tend to be much larger. Caribbean turtles tend to have smaller, more narrow heads. Now you don't see it so much in these guys, but in the breeding pond, there are a few of them that we call the originals. And the staff that work here, that have been working here for a long time, they can actually look at a turtle and identify which part of the Caribbean it came from just by the shape of the turtle's head. Okay. So let's take another closer look. Let's look at some of the little guys. Oh, here's a young male. You can see the tail. Okay, still no chance to get close to a male yet, but at some point we will. So one of the highlights here at the Turtle Center is actually being able to touch a turtle. And of course, just like as you do it, there's a process before you touch a turtle. First, you have to sanitize your hands, before and after. Second of all, it's a touch. It's not a pickup. It's not a grab. It's not a coochie-coo. Right? You're touching the turtles. And third of all, just enjoy yourself. Be calm. Don't try to stress out the turtle. Okay, so let's start touching a turtle. Get a little closer to a turtle. So first, I'm going to sanitize my hands. Right. And here we have a juvenile turtle, a shell. Now when they're young, you can see the pattern really well. That's kind of starburst pattern on each of the scales. Each one of these scales on the dorsal shell is called a scute. That sounds like cute with the S at the wrong end. And each of these scutes has that pattern. Now if you look at it carefully, if you think about it, these turtles, when they're small, they hang around seagrass because that's what they eat. If a predator comes by, what they do is they sink down to the bottom and they hide in the seagrass. And if you think of the seagrass waving with casting shadows, each one of those patterns looks like seagrass shadows. So it helps them to blend in. Of course, at this stage, we can't tell males from females just yet. Right? But there's another thing that separates juveniles from adults. Besides the size, juveniles have a posture that the adults don't do. And let's see if we can find one that's doing that. Okay, I don't know if you can see there's one down at the bottom there with his flippers hanging behind his shell. You think of somebody walking with their hands clasped behind their back. The juveniles can do that. They can fold their flippers behind their backs. That is a streamlining position. Because they're small, they don't have the same energy as adults. And usually when they're out there, this is their wandering years, what most scientists term the lost years. Very few people see a sea turtle at this size because most of the time they're out wandering. They're cruising the currents. If you remember Finding Nemo, when they first found the sea turtles, they were cruising the great current. And one of the ways that they cruise the current is by turning themselves into a hydrodynamic posture. by folding their flippers over their shell, they become little cruising machines, and they can ride. It's kind of like body surfing. They can ride the currents without having to use a lot of energy. As the turtles get older, they get a little stiff, and they can't put their flippers behind their backs anymore. So that's a feature that juveniles have that adults don't. For green turtles, between 1 to 2 years old, they change their diets, because when they start off as the hatchlings, as you saw earlier, they're omnivores. They find their way into the sargassum, seagrass beds, and they feed on basically anything they can find. They feed on the sargassum itself, they feed on little crustaceans, little animals that live inside there, bite-sized creatures. So they're omnivores. As they get older, their diet changes to herbivore. Okay? So these guys in the wild, they will still be too young to be herbivores, to be completely herbivores. They'll basically eat anything that they can, anything that they can get to. But as they get older, as they get to 2 years old, around 1 to 2 years old, they get maybe a little bigger than the steering wheel of a car. Okay? And at that stage, their diet begins to change. And that's the stage at which we release them. Because when you release them, when we head start them, which is grow them up to between a year to 2 years old, it's easier for them to transition into the wild, because now they don't have to hunt anything. Their food is anything that's green. Seagrass, algae, seaweed, and that kind of stuff is a little bit easier to find than having to chase a fish. So these guys have a much better chance of survival when you release them at the head start stage. Okay. So now we've met a little bit more about the sea turtles. We've met them a little up close and personal. We know a little bit more about adults. We know a little bit more about the hatchlings. And this is just an example of the type of research that we can get to do here, because we have sea turtles. Because we can see them at all different stages. We can observe their behavior up close and personal. And this sort of information helps the wider community, the wider scientific community, to learn more about sea turtles and make better decisions in their conservation. Things like hot chicks and cool guys. Things like knowing that they go from omnivore to herbivore. Things like knowing that that green turtles do gather in numbers. Not just for breeding, but they feed and move together. That kind of information can help us make better decisions to conserve these animals, and that's our purpose here at the Cayman Turtle Centre. We release sea turtles into the wild. We provide information to the wider scientific community so we can influence the global conservation process for these animals. And we hope that you enjoyed the talk today. And join us again tomorrow. Don't forget, at 9 o'clock tomorrow, we have our turtle release in honor of World Sea Turtle Day. So thanks for joining us, and we'll be open soon. We hope to see you again at Cayman Turtle Centre. Have a great day.